Let's turn to Egypt now, where there have been three major developments today. First, the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohamed Badie, was arrested overnight. This latest move is sure to further fuel the standoff between hardline Islamists and the military. Also out today, Egypt's former Vice President Mohamed Badie is facing a lawsuit over his decision to resign from the army-backed interim government. The case was brought on by an Egyptian law professor and accuses Badie of, quote, betrayal of trust. Meanwhile, the office of Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy told the Daily Beast on Monday that military aid to Egypt has been temporarily cut off. Now, this is quite a different narrative from what we are hearing from the White House itself, which says that aid is under review, particularly military aid, but it is not currently on hold. Now, to be clear, technically, the administration's rhetoric is not completely amiss. The $585 million of promised aid to the Egyptian military in fiscal year 2013 is not due until September 30th. So it could still happen if things there settle down, I guess. And while all of this is going on, clashes still happen in the streets of Cairo on a near daily basis. At least 1,000 people have died, hundreds of others have been injured, and there are still no signs of an end to this bloodshed and these protests. To talk more in depth about the crisis in Egypt and what it means for the U.S. and the region moving forward, earlier I was joined by Bel Trew. She was in Cairo, and I started off by asking her about the government-imposed curfew that she is currently facing.
Well, right now we're actually under government-imposed curfew, which means that across the country everyone is at home, holed up in their living rooms, eyes glued to the screen to see what the latest is happening in Egypt. It's been a quiet few days here as this curfew really has stopped all the protests, which were obviously happening through the night and through the day. Meanwhile, the military have deployed a lot of tanks to the streets. People are having to go through checkpoints to get home. There have been some instances of clashes at these checkpoints, which have led to deaths. Security are really quite jumpy at the moment. But for the moment, Egypt is largely calm and quiet.
Now, Bel, what kind of a curfew is it? Is there a set time? Is there anything that you know about when it could end?
Well, the curfew is happening every single night for a month. It starts at 7 p.m. in the evening and it finishes at 6. And this is one of the biggest curfews Egypt's seen. We had curfews, obviously, during the 18-day uprising in 2011, but this is the most significant one. And really, people are abiding by it. The streets are empty. At night, groups of citizens who form these popular committees go around their neighborhoods under the supervision of the police, essentially protecting their homes using anything they can. And this can mean that the streets can be quite dangerous if you're picked up by one of those groups who are suspicious of your activities. So it's quite a significant thing to happen to Egypt. Literally the whole capital, which is normally bustling through the night, is at a standstill as people are at home terrified of what clashes will come next.
And is there any indication of what clashes will come next? I know that we have rumors that Mohamed Morsi could be released, that Mubarak could be released. So there's a lot of different things that are circling. Can you talk about how all of these recent occurrences could play into this?
Well, absolutely. It's still extremely tense here in Egypt. We had a very bloody week, which saw almost 1,000 people killed, and neither side is backing down. I've spoken to the political parties involved on both sides, both on the government side and the Muslim Brotherhood, and they really are not going to reach any reconciliation in the coming days. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Morsi supporters have called for protests. They were supposed to happen every single day this week, but the security forces have basically put a stop to that, and not even allowing people to gather in front of mosques. Meanwhile, local residents of the areas of these mosques where they've been starting their protests have also been themselves stopping marches from happening. So it's very tense here, with sort of small scuffles breaking out across the country. Obviously, this news that Hosni Mubarak is going to be released only going to add fuel to the fire. Hosni Mubarak is a much hated figure here, and people are really feeling that even though we've had several years since the 2011 revolution, nothing has changed if he is indeed allowed to walk. Meanwhile, the Muslim Brotherhood leaders are being targeted. The ideological leader, Mohamed Badie, was actually picked today and is reportedly in detention. He was paraded across state television. This, of course, will just anger the Muslim Brotherhood and their allies even more. So at the moment, it's extremely tense, even though people are pretty much locked up in their homes.
That was RT's Bel Trew from Cairo.